Just a disclaimer before this video begins. This is my first video and I'm trying something new. So this is a little bit cringy, but let's get right into the video. Today we will be learning how to paint a plague bearer of Nurgle. So the brushes you will need. So we're going to start out, we're going to be needing a Citadel, well, I use Citadel because I like the brushes, but a Citadel base brush. The second brush we will be using is a medium dry brush. The third brush we will be using will be a shade brush. Last but not least, we will be using a small layer just for the details. For the paints that we're going to be needing, first we're going to look at the skin. The skin we're going to be using is Nurgle green. Nurgle green will work as the base. The second color for the skin that we will be using is Ushabti Bone. Ushabti Bone will work as a highlight. And finally, the wash that we're going to be using is going to be Anthonian Camo Shade. For all the bloody parts, we're going to start off with a base of Corn Red. Then we're going to follow that up with a shade of Carroburg Crimson. And finally, we're going to give that a highlight of Mephiston Red. And last but not least, for all the boils, we are going to be using a base of XV88. Then a highlight of Baylor Brown, and finally a last highlight of Ushabti Bone. This is completely optional, but I prefer to use it on my models. You can also continue on by using Nurgle's Rot. So we're first going to start with a base coat of Nurgle green. You're going to want to base coat this across the entire model. Now for this model especially, you're going to look at right there, the Nurgling. You're going to want to make sure to get that painted. Now normally, you would want to leave the wounds black, but since this model does have the Nurgling, we're going to want to give it this nice effect that would make it look like it's popping out. Now that we finished the base coat of the model, we're ready for the shade. The shade that we will be using is Anthonian Camo Shade. Just gonna open this up. Okay, so we will be using the shade brush for this, almost obviously. And the best way to do it is just, oh wait a second, let me use, I haven't used a shade brush in a while. The best way is just to coat the entire model. And you see that? Focus on it. Oops. Dang it. That right there, that's the look you want. So it's definitely going to get in all these crevices, in which you're going to make for a great looking model. Okay, and for this one, don't not include this one even though it's in a wound. Actually, it's better if you get it like that. And also, another tip, is you see that leg right there? Make sure you get in between, and make sure it's a semi-heavy not dry brush, but a wash, because that'll lead for a better defined muscles, and it'll make your model look a lot better in general. we can now start with the dry brush. We're going to start with a dry brush of Nurgle green. For those who don't know, a dry brush is when you take a paintbrush, you get an extremely small amount of paint on it, kind of like so. Actually, I'm going to get a little bit more off, but then you just go back and forth. Now, you can't just dry brush with one color, or the model will look a bit messy. We want to make this model, especially since it's skin, look a bit more natural. So we're going to start with a dry brush of our base coat, Nurgle green. Again, this is all just to make it look natural. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, that dry brush, fairly simple. Didn't take that long. That should be the outcome of it. It might not look like much has changed, but it really allows for a much more natural deviation from, not deviation, but natural change. Now, we're going to use a layer of Ushabity bone. Make sure you guys see what that looks like. Give that paint a good shake. Okay. Okay. So now we're going to do the same thing we did with the other one. Just get a little bit of paint on it. Make sure to get most of the paint off. I normally do that circle motion that you can see in the background. Okay, so now I have that brush kind of like that. It got a little bit wet, but it should still work. Now we're just going to dry brush. Now this dry brush is really light, and this will give it its final effect that makes it really look like a natural skin tone. Well, natural for Nurgle, I guess, right? Okay, so as you can see, now we're going to do all the fleshy parts. We're going to start with a base of corn red. We're going to also be using our small detail brush, because these parts are pretty small. So first I'm going to do the mouth. So the mouth, it's important to get just coverage everywhere. And make sure to really get up to those teeth. That's a pretty important part of this. Now, the other important part would be all the cuts and scrapes. Sorry for that background noise. It's family. That's all you need. It's a solid base, except for that edge right there. Okay. Other areas you'll be looking at is definitely stuff like right there, there, definitely. Okay, I'll be right back after I finish painting. Well, here, let me paint this one for you just to give you a look at what it will look like. You want to try to be pretty neat on this. If you mess up, I suggest not trying to correct yourself, because it'll just give that more bloody look towards it anyways. I'll be right back once I'm done painting all these. Now that I've finished painting all the red bloody parts, and notice on the Nurgling, I painted a little bit over it just to give it that like kind of more scary look. Now that we've finished that, we're going to go right into the shade. Shade what we're going to be using is Carroburg Crimson, and we're just going to use the wash brush again. Now, what you're going to want to do is you're just going to want to put some shade in the mouth, especially for the Nurgling. This is important. You're going to want to cover the Nurgling, because it'll give it that idea of it like still being covered in blood, like bursting out of the stomach or whatever. All the wounds. This will give them a deeper reddish look, which will look extremely nice on the models. Okay. Now what we're going to want to do along with that is take it and just go around this and paint in a random pattern like so. And this will give it like this swollen look, right? And make sure to get around all of the parts. Now, you probably noticed back I was being a little bit sloppy with it. And this is honestly why, is because once you give this swollen look, it just makes it really nasty. Oh, wow, sorry. Yeah, you know what, I might just get a little bit down there. Honestly, like, you can just go around and in crevices, you might want to put a little stuff like that, make it look a little bit more swollen. Make it look like there's like blood or something under all that fat and blubber. Okay. That's looking pretty good. Oh, another point I see people doing is the spine, because it's like popping out. Okay. So, this shade dries fairly fast, but I will be back when the shade dries. Okay. Now we're going to give a simple highlight to, oh my god. Okay, now we're going to give a simple highlight to all the, all the fleshy parts. Honestly, this just involves taking whatever, oh, I'm sorry, keeps running out of focus. Now that we have finished the Mephiston red highlights, we're going to start working on the boils. On this model especially, you can see there are boils literally about everywhere. And that's what I love about Nurgle. So we're going to start with a base coat of XV88. Now XV88 will give it a good base coat and will keep the model, again, since it is Nurgle, just to look that much more natural. So we're just going to paint all of them, and it's not just for the boils, but also these little, like, whatever these are. I guess they're kind of like popped boils, maybe? If that's a thing. Okay, I will be back once I have finished all of them. Now that we've finished the base coat of the warts or boils or whatever, now we're going to take with our detailed brush, Baylor Brown. Oh, there you go. Oh, come on. We're going to take Baylor Brown then just, come on, just do a highlight like so. You're going to want to go across the entire model and do it. Okay, I will be back when I have this done. Now that we've finished that highlight, you can clearly see that those boils are really popping out. But just to make them pop out a little bit more, we're going to add a last highlight of Ushabity Bone. So really this highlight is just a little dab. And it won't look significant on the first few. It'll actually kind of look out of place almost. But I do suggest going through the entire model, because that's exactly what I thought when I was first painting this. And they end up looking out pretty good. Okay. I will be back when this is all done. Now this last part is very optional, but all you want to do is, if you want to make your model just shine a little bit more, go to all the boils with a layer of Nurgle green and just dab it over like that. Now this will actually, I suggest doing this. It'll give this really mucky feeling, and it'll just make it look pretty darn nice. Once I'm done with that, we will finish up the model by doing just a few more little things. We've now finished the model. This skin looks pretty nice, but there is one last step if you really want this model to shine even more than it is. And that little trick is I use super glue, right? So you open it up, go to all the fleshy parts. You can always use blood for the blood god, but I don't currently have any right now. So what you just do is just dab a little bit. That kind of is chunky, but and then like so. And that'll give it, like, people will be able to see this from tables, and these models, not the most detailed, and I really suggest using them in a more tabletop, casual play kind of, or maybe you're just looking to get your models painted pretty fast. But, yeah, make sure you don't touch the super glue too much. It might stick to them. But this will conclude how to paint a Nurgle plaugebearer's skin. Thank you for watching. Feel free to like, subscribe, comment, do whatever keeps you happy. See you in the next video.